This is Pam Electric Ghost doing it live on the air where doubt is a signal, not a weakness. And you're the author of When Doubt Becomes Design. And it's a prescriptive memoir about turning uncertainty into structure and perspective and purpose. And I want to welcome you to the Pam Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Well, I feel very welcome, and I am doing just right today. In fact, I
Yes.
might be having more fun than three people should be allowed to have, and there's only just me right now. So,
It's always fun. Well, we love to talk to people live, and we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick right now. And before we get to the heart of your story, I always ask every guest a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
mm, what motivates me is I love to make a difference. My goal in life is to help people think differently for better outcomes. So I like to engage with conversation, and I've done that in my whole career. And that is really super important to me and make an impact on other people's lives.
Well, I think that's important. It's good to always kind of pay it forward because I think a lot of people that you have a learning experience and you can share it, and it's a good thing. If you everybody the whole singer songwriter mantra is everybody has these human emotions, but the songwriters are brave enough to put them into words, and then
Yes.
other people say, "Well, yeah, I felt like that before." And so if you can take that, a lot of times you have like you stumble or you fail upwards or whatever happens. And people need to understand it's not all just like, roses. Like you need to know how people get to where they go. And it's not so easy.
It isn't so easy. That's why compassion and empathy is so very important right now. Because people, especially in entrepreneurs, they go through a lot of things. And so do people in corporate, just different things. And
Hmm.
I think that's what I've, tried to do my whole life is, lead by example and show people that you can make it even when things look really, really tough.
Yeah, because your entrepreneurship, like I work in my day job, I have been software development, a business system analyst working multiple technologies. Started with COBOL, and now we're in the AI world. But I've been kind of through everything, and I'm still actively working in that with a startup. But I found like I used to work with these big Fortune 500s, and then like in my 20s, and I'm like, they kind of bored me. They kind of burned me out, and they bored me. I got bored, so I had to go with the entrepreneurs because they were doing exciting stuff, and then you could wear any hat, and they were passionate. Where other people, like, they kind of feign being passionate. They say they're passionate, but then they would put up all these roadblocks and you can't get anything done. So I got tired of it.
Yeah, I can't sit in a cubicle,
Yeah.
not for long, right? I can't just sit in a cubicle. And actually that's how I lost my first job. My last W-2 job I lost because I got tired of sitting around. They want me to
In a
sit around
cubicle.
and sweep up, and I was an illustrator at the time, and they wanted me, when it was down, and they wanted me to just, putz around, and I'm like, I'm not a putzer, man. I'm 23 years old and I got some horses in me, and I need to go I need to go
Yeah.
use them somewhere. I said, "Let me go." I said, I won't charge you for the time. I'll be back when you need me."
Well, yeah,
But
it's better to be like freelancer or like consultant because like the problem I have with it, you have all these companies like they talk about like thinking out the box and then they put you in a cubicle.
right.
And then they sit there micromanaging you, asking like making sure that you're sitting in the cubicle. When if you really deal with the people that know what they're doing, they don't have to sit in the cubicle. Sometimes they like your best ideas are like not when you're in the cubicle, like or not when you're in traffic or you're in an Uber or you're on a plane and you're like, how much time are you wasting when you actually could be doing other things?
How many paintings were written and how many songs were written in a cubicle? That might be a
Yeah,
good name of the song.
yeah. I don't think it's really coming from there. So it's interesting. So you decided like when the doubt becomes design, and I've never heard anybody talk about like doubt being like a superpower or being like something that you could push up because everybody's always trying to run from doubt and say, "Oh, they know what they're doing."
It's different. I would tell you, Phantom, I don't think the way I look at it is a shift. Maybe from the mainstream, but when you really understand what it's doing, it is a signal. I mean,
Mhm.
Doubt is a signal. The way I look at it is, I wrote this little thing called the law of doubt. And by the way, we all, if there's 100 people in a room and I asked how many of us suffer from doubt, it'd be 101 because
Yeah, everybody.
I'd be the next one, right? Everybody. And so I wrote this thing called the law of doubt, and it said when something becomes unstable, doubt rises and demands an answer. And we resolve doubt by addressing the instability it exposed. Because
Mhm.
doubt doesn't sit around, Phantom, looking for us. You know, it doesn't like, yeah, I'm going to go, I'm going to go mess with your mind a little bit. You know, I mean, you look like you're a little bit too successful. Let's go throw some, doubt mix in there. Doubt just doesn't work like that. And to say that we're full of doubt, like holistically, we'll apply it holistically because I think that's really what it comes to. We're like, oh, I doubt myself, or I doubt whether I
Mhm.
can do this. I would say that's an incomplete statement, and the reason it's an incomplete statement because doubt doesn't work alone. It actually it's anchored into some sort of unstable or uncertain situation.
Mm.
I could give you a real quick example. So
Yeah.
let's take it corporate and entrepreneur. So what happens is that we get a promotion. I was talking to somebody recently, and they got a promotion, and they were like doubting whether they were qualified for the promotion. And I've also met lots of entrepreneurs that started businesses or launched a product, and were wondering if it would be successful. Well, that's a great place for doubt to get really loud, right? So, in the situation of like the promotion, we doubt the ability for the promotion. We doubt our ability for the promotion, or in the business sense, we doubt about the business we founded. Are we smart enough? Are we good enough? So what
Mm.
happens, there's two types of doubt working there. One is self-doubt. That turns everything inward. So by the way, the situation, remember, is the promotion. The doubt now, that what I call is an intellectual emotion, because we feel it, but we feel it also with our brain. So what we do is we doubt our ability to do these things, and then self-doubt kicks in. It gets loud, and we start questioning ourselves, right? And while we're questioning ourselves, I would say there's probably another type of doubt. It's, like a standard of doubt, and it's intellectual doubt. And what intellectual doubt does, it allows us to question whether the facts, the evidence, the reasoning, or the understanding is actually accurate. So
Mm.
what doubt's doing is it's telling us, okay, a really good way to put it is like the bat signal, right? Gotham City needs Batman.
Yeah,
They
he
put
puts
it
a bad
right.
signal.
They put a
Yeah.
signal in the sky, right?
Commissioner Gordon's gonna see it, yeah.
Right. And when Batman shows up, the signal's no longer needed because an action now comes into place. Dale Carnegie had a great quote, and his quote was, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. So the reality is that what I'm saying is that, Phantom, we're not broken. When we have doubt, we're not broken. We're not in a weak state. We're actually in a perfect situation because we're not broken. It's the situation that's broken,
Mhm.
and it's a situation that needs attention.
We need to take an action. Like, I guess the question is it stay broken if you don't take an action? If you have a non-action and you just allow it to be in a broken state, or you're in the worried state, or you're in this imposter syndrome state, and you don't do anything to resolve it.
Correct. You just sit in it. And what you do is when you sit in it, it's telling you to do something. It's screaming at you. And we start backfilling in things like anxiety and fear and more
Mm.
doubt. So the person that got a promotion, and the person I was talking to, she was well seasoned. I mean, she was in her late 60s, and she is still kicking, man. She's still
To
making a
work.
big
Yes.
impact, right? She's doing
Yeah.
great. And here she's been in business for a long time, and she was working in corporate. So all I encouraged her to do was take action. And the action I told her, based on intellectual doubt, was to go back and look at your resume. I said, something in your resume told the people that want to promote you that you're qualified. And your resume tells you you're qualified. The years of experience tells you you're qualified. All these things are pointing in the direction that you're qualified because now you're checking off those facts because
Mhm.
that's the action we take. So my question is, where does doubt now reside? It can't. It's like that bat signal. There's no need for it. Now it'll show up somewhere else. I can, Phantom, I
Yeah.
guarantee you, it's going to show up again, right?
Well, I think the problem sometimes, like, in the workspace, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in IT, right? And IT has very specific skill sets, right? So if you wanna be, into the top of AI, there's a lot of language capability. You might need a PhD in language, like, to
Mm-hmm.
really be into the depths of it, and then also understand engineering. If you came from a different area, let's say you're working with actuaries, you might say, "Well, I don't have enough of the language," but you do have a lot of logic. You have a lot of algorithmic capability. So, like, some people start doubting, like, "Can I actually do it? Because I don't have the actual thing they want on the job board." But I've always pushed into jobs where I didn't exactly have everything, but I felt like I could do it because I'm a musician, and what do musicians do? We always push to things that we don't know how to do, right? We'll push into areas that, like, I'm not the best at Bach, but I'm gonna keep on trying, right? Like, you try to push, and you're not gonna be Sun Ra, you're not gonna be, Coltrane, you're not gonna be this person, but it doesn't mean you don't try, you
Right.
know? So you have to push.
You're going to be you. And what's
Yeah.
really good in a musician is they create rhythms, right? And that's what business is. It's rhythms. So the truth is that we've done things in our life that have allowed us to get over, right? Now, the last business I had was a manufacturing facility. And I developed a product. Now, I barely made out of high school. This is a secret between us, okay? I barely made out of high school as a C average student. I was bored. And so I barely made it out of high school. I ended up owning developing a award winning product. I mean, go figure that out just because I thought I could. There was a need and I made it. So doubt had a big role in that, right? Like
Yeah, like,
I
I
didn't
was
know how to
thinking,
do
like, I
things.
don't have this, I don't have that. They probably
How do you
kept doing
manage
the
people?
comparison trap. Yeah, how you doing a comparison? It's like, I don't if you didn't have an MBA or you didn't go here, you didn't go there, right? And then but there's tons of people who are super passionate, like the garage engineer, the garage
Yep.
inventor that comes up with something, and there's a lot of kids today, they haven't gone to college at all, but they've got, like, amazing capabilities. I've run into 'em. These 20 somethings that can do stuff like they can outcode some of these other guys. And I'm like, how did they do it? Because they were passionate about it. They wanted to learn. It's like the kid who takes apart the radio back in the 70s, you
Right.
know, figure out how to get into electronics, and then they start building stuff. They didn't go take the degree, but they were curious and they try to take things apart and figure out how to put it back. You know, that's how it works.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Corn Ferry Consulting firm found that 71% of US CEOs experience imposter syndrome, right?
Mhm.
We're good at building something or designing something or doing something, right? And all of a sudden, and by the way, I did never experience imposter syndrome during the startup phase. I was too busy. I was trying to figure it out. Like I said, I figured out a product, how to build a product. And by the way, when doubt set in and I didn't know how to do assembly, guess what I did? I went to YouTube. There's a lot of people that know how to do assembly. Found somebody that knows how to
How's
do
it to do it?
assembly or lean manufacturing, and you can learn a lot of things. So it overcomes like I doubt myself that I can do it. Well, once I see it, then I can apply it and do it. But 71% of all US CEOs suffer from experience imposter syndrome. And I did a podcast on it and I was like, well, that's very interesting because I never experienced it until I wanted to grow. So that
Mhm.
one thing that I could do, right? Now I needed HR. Now I needed better finances. I needed a better
Or you
CPA,
need
right?
you need
I needed
accounting, CPA,
I
you need.
engineered everything, but there was a point in the product that I had to engineer things. I ended up laying out three. And by the way, none of this is bragging. It's never bragging if it's true, right?
Mhm.
The truth is, I had a 40,000 square foot plant. That may not be big to some people, but that was big to me.
That's pretty big.
And so I had to figure out all those systems. And I said, boy, if I do a TED talk, and I'm going to call it 23,536 steps to success, because that's how many steps I had to write down out of 17 years to figure out, have to be able to train somebody else to do it. Because once I wrote it down, it existed and it could help me. And it removed a lot of the doubt that I had, because now the proof was there. The evidence was there.
But you're a I mean, you're a patented inventor, so you went the route of like, "Hey, I'm gonna take this idea and I'm gonna go to the patent office and I'm gonna actually register it." Now, there's a
Oh,
lot of people that have ideas, but they don't take it that far and take it that serious and understand that if you don't protect yourself, you can get ripped off.
it seems like inventors, Phantom, never make the money. The
Yeah,
two guys,
most of the time they don't, because somebody takes their idea or they take their concept because they didn't go through all the steps and then they get taken advantage of.
DuPont made it rich, man, on bubble wrap, right? You know where bubble wrap came from? Now, the facts may be a little off, but it's really, really damn close. But two guys in Chicago were trying to find out a way to do insulated wallpaper. That's where
Mm.
bubble wrap came from. And they never made the money because most
Well, a lot of
inventors
times they
don't.
end up selling it like as a work for hire, and they sell themselves short. I mean, this happens to musicians all the time. It's like
All the
classic story where you sell your master rights or you sign the contract so you can pay the rent, and then you don't realize in the contract because 'cause you're not a lawyer, that you gave
yeah.
up all your mechanical rights, and so you don't own anything.
Well, or you could have been like Neil Diamond, who wrote "I'm a Believer" and gave it to the Monkees, and it went number one.
Mhm,
I would say it's very similar to the entrepreneur, that I would encourage entrepreneurs to stop thinking or even wanting to be the smartest person in every room.
mhm,
Once we decide that we don't want to be or don't have to be the smartest person in every room, our trajectory will change. It will go up, because we can't do everything. We can do everything, but we may not do it well.
mhm.
I engineered a lot of things, but when I brought that engineer on board, boy, things changed then. We started making some movements, right? Like it was
Yeah.
really, really exciting, but it's
Once you
true.
get a
Like,
team and you go from one person to a team of engineers, then suddenly, like, you have to listen to, like, other people's ideas. It's like becomes like being like I think it's just this, like, room of ideas. And when you're a
yes,
solo entrepreneur, it's all you. Or maybe you're in a dual relationship where you have a partner. But once you start opening it up to an enterprise, you get 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, then you have to start letting go or you're going to be all tied up.
that's 100%. And, like when we talk about doubt, because I think imposter syndrome certainly falls right into doubt. What we just talked about, again, is an action that will solve the doubt. Because if you don't think you can grow the business, or you're the person who can grow the business, maybe you need to find some people around you that can help, that maybe are smarter than you in other areas, that help you grow the business, which means now we've started to scrub out, right? Imposter
Mhm.
syndrome out of our heads. I used to get really intimidated, Phantom. I'd go in these business meetings and I'm just like, I'm Mr. Hobunk, man. We're just gonna we're just, we're just gonna go in there, and we're just gonna rub elbows with people that are much smarter than me, much better than me. Everything's better than you. The reality, it's not. And I
Yeah.
went to a business coach one time, Phantom, and I asked her, I said, what? I said, I don't feel like I'm the person to take this business to the next level. And she said, why not? I said, I walk in this room, man, and all these people are in there. And I said, I'm so intimidated by them. She goes, pick
Mhm.
out 5 of those people and let's go have breakfast with them. And says, you'll find out one thing. She said, you will find out that they feel the exact same way about you as you do about them.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like it's interesting because people have these filters, right?
Yeah.
Like you perceive things based on the way your brain works. So when you hear something, you put it through the filter. If you got that imposter syndrome filter, every time you see somebody, you think they're better than you, right?
E-
It's like so
every
you
time.
think that yeah, it's like so if you can't get beyond that, and it's like where well like everybody has their own purpose. Everybody has something they're really good at. Like, I always point this out. Like if you're a singer songwriter and you write everything, when you give that part to a real drummer, they're going to play it better than you. If you give it to a bass player, the bass player is going to play better than you. You give it to a horn player, they're going to play better than what you arranged. And then you have to kind of let go the composition to allow it to get better. Because if you don't, you're going to be there and everybody's going to hate you because you're just going to keep on trying to keep it at the demo level when it needs to actually get to a better level. It needs to get to a produced, like released level.
Yeah, it needs to get to an explosion, right?
Yeah.
So there's these four anchors of stability, and what you're just talking about, what we were just talking about is perception and its cousin, comparison, right? Because we compare ourselves all the time to something that isn't even an equal to us. They've created their own thing, right? We've created our own thing. A good friend of mine wrote a book, and one of the things he said was, "You're weird is somebody else's wonderful."
Hmm.
There's a lot of people out there to reach, and we are not going to all reach it by all being phantoms, and we're not going to reach everybody by everybody being a Marty, right?
Yeah.
We got to
That's
put it
kind
out.
of the problem with the algorithms today because everybody puts the cat video with the same song on it because
Mm,
the algorithm likes that. But the point is like just because you only get like 50 likes for your post doesn't
yes,
mean you failed. Because who did you reach, right? And maybe you needed to reach this one person in that 50, right? But everybody measures things like I gotta have 1,000,000 views, I gotta have 10,000 likes. So if you measure everything like that, then everything's a failure.
yes.
And but it's not.
And doubt in that situation, Phantom, that doubt in that situation is signaling us to slow down a little bit. Check the facts. Really check the facts. Like you just said, you rattled a bunch of stuff. We're looking at one algorithm, but there is a lot of things that we can start looking and checking the facts. And the key is to stop letting fear or self perception write the narrative. How about we write the narrative? Because if we hit just and make impact on one person today, brother, we have done well. We've really done well.
Yeah, it's that the metrics that people are pushing from the SEO experts to all these people telling you how to do tags and how to go back and like pull all the ums out of your podcast, pull all
Right.
the dead air out. And I've always been the kind of guy like I like live radio in the vulnerability.
Mhm.
Vulnerability in music is my big thing. I've always been a big fan of the bands that's like third, fourth take instead of doing take 101 because they're closer to what their original intent is, and they're willing to be a little vulnerable. If they get into this perfection trap today, people want things that are overly produced to the point that they're antiseptic, and they
Th-
seem to have lost all the plot.
And they sound like that, right? They sound scrubbed is what they do. Is they sound they don't sound authentic.
Yeah,
Because authenticity is a rarity nowadays, right? We find everything's kind of canned, right?
you're very
We all
canned.
remember when everybody used the filters that made them all look, perfect. It was
Yeah,
so, and that, at first we're like, wow, look at, there's no blemishes, right?
yeah, but
Then we
that's
look
not
at it, we're
real.
like, we
It's
look
like
at it now, we're
Photoshop
like,
everybody.
we
Photoshop
go,
every
now we're saying something's wrong, right? Right? Something's
no, it's just
wrong.
it's too weird, like, you see some of these AI slops.
Yeah.
It doesn't look real. It seems forced. I watch a lot of K drama, a lot of Japanese dramas, a lot and sometimes when they have English, like, overdubs, it's so forced. I actually like to listen to it in Taiwanese or in Korean or in Japanese and just read the subtitles because the when the actors come in and try to do the English, it just feels like AI. It feels like slop. It doesn't work.
It
The
doesn't
natural
work.
language from the original piece, like, if I watch something that is a Japanese drama, I actually wanna hear the Japanese because the way the actor's saying it, even if I don't understand it, is important for me to get that actor, like, what they're trying to get across,
Yeah. The
and I don't
tone.
think the language is not as important. The tone is more important.
It is important. Yeah, we're missing that. Authenticity in leaders is kind of the same thing. We could be so coached that we're not even us anymore. I remember that I had a really good coach, And he asked me, he says, Marty, I want you to read more books. Now I read books and everything. He said, I just want you to read a book cover to cover. Because I'm a
Mhm.
gleaner, man. I glean. I used to read
Like clean.
encyclopedias when I was, yeah, I used to be a encyclopedia. I'd read encyclopedias as a kid. And so
Britannica,
that
you
was,
got the big collection.
yeah, I like the facts, man. Let's get A through Z. And, but he says, Marty, I want you to read more books. And I said, okay. And I called him a week later. I said, Chip, yep, I'm ready to read I stood up straight, ready to read my book. What do you want me to read? He asked me one question. He says, what do you want to become?
Mm,
Now, I've been in business 17 years, just in one business. One business. I've been in business 40. And I said, Chip, I have no idea what I want to become. I said, I'll get back to you in a few days. You know, but the fact is, he challenged me, number one. And then I came back and I said, Chip, I want to be a better listener. Now,
mm.
remember I said when you're in doubt, you're not broken. If you want to be a better listener, doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Because I've had people say, "Well, you wanted to be a better listener. There must have been something wrong with you." I said, "No, I wanted. Did you hear? I wanted to. I wanted to be a better listener. I wanted to listen to my people better." So he says, "I got the book for you." It was John Maxwell's "Good Leaders Ask Great Questions."
Mm.
Now, I loved it. I enjoyed it. He was a great coach. And he kept working on me to be better and better and better. And I got to tell you, one day I woke up and I kind of fell out of love with business
Mm.
and signed this
Frozen.
whole process because I said, Phantom, I said, it's like you want me to change. And I didn't tell him this. I said, but basically, you want me to change for other people. I said, but I want to be authentic. I want to change for myself. I want to be I want to be authentic.
Mm.
I don't want to be programmed. Well, if you say this is what you'll get. And you say this is what you get. I said, dude, you got the wrong guy. I got lots of bumps and pimples and I got sharp edges on me. And be careful, you hit one of them, you might get cut. I mean, that's just what it is. It's just who we are. It's
Yeah.
authentically who we are. We can't scrub that out of us. And I think that's one of the reasons comparison is such a rampant thing because if you go to another podcast and they get 1 million hits and you got, you know, 200,000 hits, you obviously are doing something wrong. But what if you are making better impact?
Yeah,
And how
because I
you,
mean, what is the because like it's like the idea when you do analysis of like, okay, you got all these people viewing your site, but what's the click through rate? What's the actual like are they buying the product? If you actually go look, it's like, oh, they clicked on it, but did they actually go through and complete a sale? Did they actually go and interact? Did they come back? Right? Are they a repeat customer? It's like if people just have all these views, does it really translate to them actually buying a record? People
right,
have all these views and then nobody shows up at the concert. So you think you got 1 million views, but like nobody shows up to your show. Like, what were those views? If they're not really dedicated fans, if you have a band that maybe has, 60,000 fans, but they're still around for like 10 years because all those fans buy the vinyl, they buy the t shirt, they show up for multiple shows. You can actually survive without making millions of dollars, but doing what you love rather than trying to try to be this big megastar. So, what do you
right.
want to do?
Are the likes the award? Is that the reward that you get? Right. I'm not so sure that's it. I got to tell you, in my world, I think a reward. And by the way, I won awards. I'm a patent inventor. I won a patent. I won Inc. 5000 for one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. Oh boy, I'm so glad I could tell you that. For me, what it tells me is that the foundation of the things that I built were solid,
Mhm.
right? It wasn't like, oh boy, look what you did, because we usually did it as a team. But the reality is that it was the proof of the foundation was built correctly. Now I got
Mhm.
to tell you something. I was accepting a very prestigious award in the early education market. I'll keep this short. But I was there. I got to Dallas. It was at a big conference, and the people that tried to steal my design were in the audience. You know, if you're gonna do a little moonwalk, you're gonna do it that day, right? And I had no idea. I won the what was called the Director's Choice Award, and I was there, and I got tapped on my shoulder halfway through, and they said, "Martin, do you have a speech prepared?" And I said, "For what?" They said, "You won the Judges Selection Award for my product." I said, "Well, that's pretty cool." And I got really nervous, and sweat was going down my back, and so I had to go up and receive it. Now, the interesting thing, that was a good feeling, and I was really, it's interesting. The my short speech said, I was happy that we won it because it gave credibility to the product, that it really helps daycare directors.
Hmm.
And then I was coming down off the stage, the thing had ended, and this woman came up to me, Phantom. She says, "Mr. Watts, you have a moment?" I said, "My name's Marty." Like, sure, of course, I got time. And she says, "I have a school upstate New York that we had a mold problem, and we were going to get shut down, and I was going to lose it. The staff was going to lose everything. I was going to lose the business." She said, "But what they did was the health department allowed us to clean up a section. We found your sinks online, your portable sinks online, and put them in." She said, "We bought like 10 of them." And she said she was able to clean up, move, clean up, move. She goes, "I thank you for for having the product that allowed me to save my business." Now,
Mhm.
that story, that feeling was certainly a lot different than the feeling of winning an award.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
actually
the
like somebody using their product.
you want to get rid of doubt, do something and recognize that the things that you're doing already are already good enough.
Well, yeah, effective people, like, if you put something out in the world and then you get the feedback that it actually furthered somebody, like, it allowed them to do something, that it gave them capabilities that they didn't know they had were able to have, or they were able to complete a task because of something you helped, create or you created. I think
Yeah.
all the accolades and all the you like you said, it gives you the baseline that you're doing the right thing, but when you actually have people come back and they give you the feedback that it meant something to them. If you're a writer and like if you write like fiction and people tell you that your story really affected them, that's like better than if you win the award. Like, oh well, it'd be cool to win their awards, but when people come back and they tell me that it actually moved them, that I think every artist gets like, yeah, fine. Like I think that's why you keep on doing it because you're doing it because you want to move people. You want to move yourself. Every artist wants to do it because they move themselves first. And then they hope other people will come along.
I mean, the idea is really why do you do, what's your passion in life in the first place, right? So the next time I'm full of doubt, and by the way, I wrote the book the next morning. I was full of doubt. I wrote a book on doubt and woke up with doubt.
Yeah,
You
well,
know, 'cause
it's a constant thing. It
that's
never
how
goes
real
away.
that's how real doubt is, right? So the next time I'm in my little pity party of doubt, right, I can go back to that story, Phantom, and said, "You remember that lady in New York? Remember the thing that you did? You created. It helped her. Hold your damn head up and let's go."
Yeah, I mean, everybody always wants to take the thing that went wrong and elevate that, and that becomes like everybody's like trigger. Everybody's like freaked out about the thing that goes wrong, and they don't count the things that go right.
Right.
They minimize the things that go right to the point where sometimes they'll take themselves out of the game because they minimize all the things that went right because they just elevate the mistakes. But like you have to break some eggs. I'm in software design. We how many iterations do we do? And when we put stuff out, we're still doing iterations all the time. We're living this kind of never-ending cycle of like we didn't know that yesterday, we know that today, and so we
Right.
fix it. It's not like a machine, like machines, like, oh, well, maybe you can update the software, but if it's like, mechanically, it's got something wrong. You gotta make a new design. Our stuff, we can keep on tweaking it, yeah, ad nauseum.
Right. Continuous improvement. Yeah, it's the
Yeah,
same thing. Phantom, if I tell you 10 things about you and one of them's negative, I guarantee you will remember the negative one.
yeah, that's how we're built.
Yeah. Sometimes that's good because that's that continuous improvement part. But the part that's bad is that we allow it to overshadow the 9 good things about us.
Yeah, it's like when if you were I had this English teacher, 2 different teachers. I had one a creative writing teacher that would kind of not really care about the grammar as much if she saw a really good idea. And this other teacher, like, she just red mark you to death, and then you didn't even wanna be in the room, right? So, like, the other
Right.
lady, like, would tell you your idea, it was great, and then at the very end, she was like, "Well, there's a couple things here you gotta fix." Where the other teacher's approach was everything bad front loaded and never tell you about anything good. And so then you don't really get hyped about being in that class, you're not hyped about being there, and it's a different approach. Like, if you take that kind of approach even with as a manager, right, and you go and you're hypercritical and you don't show people that they're appreciated, they might be walking out the door.
It's true. That's called culture, isn't it? You know, it's an intentional culture to get people to see that they've done well. I used to have a what I called I'd shut the office down at 2 o'clock on Fridays, and I would say it's humble win. It's time for humble wins. And so I'd get those old janky plastic champagne glasses that you had to put together that were always, always a little tilty, kind of like, just they'd be a little janky. And I'd get sparkling wine and I'd get sparkling grape juice because some people don't drink. And we'd
Mm,
fill those glasses up and we'd start with a humble brag, meaning something that you did that week that you were so proud of that you've done. And it was interesting because I could have them 20 things they got to say everything they did wrong. Because, in our jobs, Phantom, in our regular jobs, we're designed to solve problems. And
mhm.
so even though it's a positive things, it has a negative connotation to it. So all week I would tell them to write down when you've done something good, write it down. And so because we're going to talk about it on Friday, and it didn't have to be some lengthy, look how great I am. It's called a humble brag. So
Mm,
that was one of the things that we did. Or to reward somebody, like a shout out in a meeting, I would say if you have a good core value system, right? Not a core value that's written on the walls, but one that's written in the hearts and you live. Core value, a value system is who you are that day or that era, not who you were, not who you want to be, but a core value is who you are. So one of our core values was own it. So
mhm.
the shout out wasn't like, hey Tika, you did a great job this week. How meaningful is that?
Yeah.
I would say, hey Tika, last week when that customer called and that freight didn't get to that person and they didn't meet that health inspection, but you stepped up and you did everything you could, and hey, you really owned it. And we would reward it by the value system. It's interesting that when we start using that intentional um, uh, instruction, culture building, it's amazing how we're different. And we can do that at home too. We could do it
Mhm.
within our personal stuff. If you and I started a business, you would have your values and I'd have my values. Let's say we had 5 different values each or 5 values each. I guarantee you, for you and I to do business, 4 of them have to match, right?
Yeah. You gotta be in sync somewhere.
You got to be in sync somewhere, and that's why managers lose it a lot of times because they're not in sync. They're just hiring bodies and they're just doing their thing.
Well, it's like
But they're
widgets. It's if you think of your employees as widgets
mm,
and you have no idea, what their value is, or you think you can just lay them off and get new people all the time and you can just pass them through. Because one of those things, I worked in Japan from 2004 to 2006, and one thing I noticed is, like, on the floor, they would take the feedback from the floor guys running the assembly stuff. Like, that could get all the way back to the engineer. And the engineer wouldn't go and kinda say, "Well, I'm not taking an idea from somebody on the floor." They actually would respect it. So then that person would probably that assembler is there like 20 years because they felt like they were valued, and they felt they were listened to, they felt they're part of the whole enterprise. Instead of this being somebody they can just get, "Well, you can just be out. That we can just swap you out with somebody else, it doesn't matter."
replaceable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, replaceable. And that's a terrible place to feel. That's a terrible place to be. Because a lot of times it's just the right person in the right seat. And if you decide to get rid of somebody, maybe there's another place in the company that they can do better. Maybe, it's kind of funny like the person that has OCD that we say, oh, they have OCD. They're so anal. They're so this, and they're
Yeah.
they're over in the shipping department. Maybe they need to be in quality control,
Yeah, maybe there should be a quality
right?
assurance
They're
person.
they're so detailed, they're so OCD. Why don't we put them in quality control and see if they do better there?
But it's
You know?
like sometimes we don't understand the human capital we have and we're wasting it.
Yes.
I think there's some folks that don't have the right, maybe not that you need psychology or sociology, but you have to have some understanding of humanity. And if you think of people as an assembly line, as a widget, as an automaton, and you don't think of them as human beings, like there was a point when there was like craftsmanship in the process, and then we went
Yeah.
to assembly line, went to the cubicle. But now what we see is we want that craftsmanship like phase that we used to have before assembly lines. And now, because some of the tech, we can have some of that creativity that doesn't have to get forged into a box. You can have people
Mm.
that actually have different ideas that are non-standard and they can be actually worked on. And you don't have to say, well, we can't do that. That's blue sky. There's more stuff that's blue sky that you can actually do.
There's still time. There's still hope, right? I mean, I was
Yeah.
in business 40 years. I figured this stuff out in the last 5.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for everybody, but my teams were not always great. I wasn't great. I was a micromanager. I was all these different things, just like many of us, the younger entrepreneurs can be, right?
Yeah.
But I,
Because you
but
guys
I'm
know
not
what you want. I mean, if you
right.
know what you want, you're not going to hold any quarter if somebody tells you something that doesn't match what you think you should be. I mean, you're going to be like, no, no, no.
It's nice when you have somebody on the outside who can see your blind spots, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But once I learned it, it was very interesting. I remember when I felt like it was measurable. Culture and good things are, that's the other thing is that, even doubt, it's measurable. It doesn't last forever. It's measurable. Oh, that ended here, it started here. So you can measure it. But culture is also measurable, and how we treat people is measurable. Because
Mhm.
I remember how I measured it one day. It was a revelation, actually. We'd have our Christmas party, and we didn't have a big place. We had, maybe 25, 30 people. And I remember somebody's wife coming up to me. She says, Marty, do you mind if I talk to you? And I said, of course. And she says, since Brian's worked for you, he's been with you guys for 20, for 5 months. It was 5 months. For 5 months, he comes home happy every day. Now, if that's not measurable, I don't know what
That's
is.
pretty that's not how a lot of people in corporate America come home.
No, they don't come home happy. And so the intention was, I don't want people to leave home burdened. Do your
Mhm.
job here. Let's give you enough to do your job. I
Yeah.
also noticed that with fresh, happy people and a good culture and giving them meaningful work, boy, it shoots up like,
Morale goes up. I mean, do you think if you feel that if you're an enterprise that you can move the needle, that if you have an idea, it's not gonna be ignored, that you can actually talk to people that can make the move, and they will
Mhm.
listen to you and not just say, "Hey, that's a nice idea," and then never implement it, right? Never do anything and never say, "Hey, hi, how you doing? You're doing a great job," and, like, they don't even it's like, "What job did I do? Do you know what I do?"
Right, right. It's canned responses. It's AI stuff. Oh my God. It's algorithm. That's an algorithm, isn't it? It's a
Yeah, yeah.
company algorithm.
Yeah, that's what they do. I mean, it's interesting because we talked about failing, and I've mentioned, like, failing upward, and like I say in this in it software design, half of my work is like QA, and half of it is design. I kinda get into both because I've been a heavy QA person, so I have a pretty good m mindset when it comes to that, so I'm kind of a lead on that just because 'cause I've been doing it for so many years, but I also do some of the upfront design. So I like, I try to separate like different projects where I didn't design it and QA it. I'll QA somebody else's design, and then somebody will QA my design, and kind of we swap around. But I think you have to give yourself an understanding that failure is kind of necessary. At least in a QA perspective, we purposely try to break things.
Right?
So, because we're trying to stress test everything this like, and show that maybe it isn't perfect. Maybe you need to think about what you could do better,
Mm.
So we try to show, like, the engineers is like, "Hey, we can kinda get around this. You thought you couldn't get around it, we can't."
Right. We work from the mistakes, right? And we always talk about that too, because that sounds like a lot of work, by the way, Phantom. And then, like Oh, I went through the school of hard knocks, right? I'd like to know when the hell genius kicks in. When
Yeah.
does genius kick in? And so I think that when you intentionally break something to make sure it works, I think that doesn't fall in hard knocks. I think that falls into genius. What do you think?
Well, I've always wanted to make sure that we've got, like, good foundation, and
Yes.
you gotta really stress test the foundation, like, you can mathematically check it with your math and say, "Will these pillars take this load?"
Yep.
But then you have to check it, like, is your math right? Right? So, you make assumptions like, are your calculations correct? But if you
Mhm.
add those 10 floors, do you have enough steel? Maybe you don't. Maybe you
Right.
did something wrong.
I think genius is that. It's testing and knowing that you have to test. I think that's genius. And the other thing that I think is genius and is understanding that we talked about earlier is that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Because that's genius. Once you realize that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, you get better people in
Yeah,
and your company goes up. That's
yeah.
pretty genius to me. I was
Well,
thinking
you
about
admit
that the other day. I was like, what does genius kick in,
well,
man? What
when
is
you admit what you don't know, because you get these
uh,
people that will come in the room and they say they know everything. And, well, how could that be? I've never met anybody that knows everything, but
no.
I've run into people that pretend that, and then they kinda put the enterprise at risk when they make all these
Mm,
assumptions because they think they're, like, the best of the best, and they're not actually stress testing their idea by
yeah.
challenging it with somebody that might because maybe their ego or their id comes into play and they got some kind of issue, they don't wanna hear it, they don't wanna see it. So if it doesn't exist, if you don't test for it, then it doesn't exist. So you get this mindset, well, if we don't test for that, then we
Mm.
don't have the problem. So it's like, but maybe you should test for that.
Just maybe we should, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that is really important. It really is. These are important things. There is a point of genius that we can apply. I think when we understand structure and we understand some of these things and we ignore them, and just to piggyback on what you just said, like apply that on a personal level. There's people out there that think they know everything about you.
Yeah.
Like they think they know everything in the business, but then they think they know everything about you in 5 minutes. And I'm like, you don't know me. You don't know what I'm made of. You don't know what I've been through.
Mhm.
You don't know where I'm going, and you don't know where I've been. You know, in because people like want to doubt, judge people and doubt their ability. You know, I would say give people a chance to prove themselves. You
Yeah, because
know,
everything's very surface level, because like if people see like on your job board, they see your qualifications and then they use these AI tools to match exactly. But I think back in the day, like I mean, I'd be on a Rolodex and call somebody up and say, "Hey, can I come and talk to you about like whatever?" And then that became an opportunity because it's like a face to face, call you on the phone, meet you at the coffee shop, have a discussion, and then that discussion led to actually getting into an opportunity rather than, oh, I got to have all these things checked off on this list. And it has to be exactly what you want. And you can't deviate from that at all. So if this guy is missing X, Y, and Z, oh, we can't pick him.
mm,
I think that is a total disaster. What's been going on with that? I think it's like it's. I think there are lots of people who are getting mismatched and not being placed correctly because there's no human factor being considered.
yeah, I would agree with that. 100%. It's just interesting how we go through things and we think that we don't. It's a perception, right? We deal with these I love that what you talked about algorithms, but the perception that we're not successful because that person didn't have the right thing on their resume. Like the idea that if I asked you, here's a good question. Statistically, what's the percentage of US companies that do a million or more in gross revenue? What's the percentage of US companies that do a million or more in gross revenue?
I don't have that off the top of my
Just
head, but
Just take a stab at it.
I don't know, you would hope it'd be greater than 30%.
Yeah. Because, it's interesting because we watch the news and we make perceptions of what business is based on these big, huge corporations. Here's the truth. 4%.
Yeah, which that's pretty small. I know, like, in
Wow.
the tech space, there are a lot of these modern tech bro companies
Mhm.
have never made a profit.
Yeah.
So it's
And they
like you guys have all this, like, all this, like, future revenue plans or ideas about what you're actually gonna do compared to an entrepreneur that actually has to meet the profit loss. You
Yes.
guys haven't met the profit loss at a small level. Like, a solo entrepreneur, a sole
Y
proprietor, you're failing. You don't even balance your budget.
Right. But think how we compare ourselves to that, right? We compare ourselves that we think that if I'm not doing like, because I always hear that, be a millionaire, be a millionaire, be a millionaire. 4% our companies are over that of the US. So if you're doing $600,000 and your family's well taken care of and you're not stressed out all day, I think you're doing pretty well, right?
Mhm.
I think that we can fight that comparison or that perception idea that like it's like the idea of like, oh, what is a CEO? The CEOs are just making millions of dollars. Well, they're very big companies. Number one. Now we just realize there's a whole bunch of smaller companies that are very successful doing that. Here's a unique stat: 80% of all CEOs in the it, uh, 82% of all CEOs are CEOs of one person companies.
Oh, wow, just like
When you
they're small,
Wow,
really
yeah, they're
small.
so small. What is small, right? We That's a perception because like if I'm doing 10 million, is that a small company? People say no.
No, yeah,
The idea of a small company or a small business in America, according to the Small Business Association, is that you have 400 or less employees. It's not even
well,
a revenue.
it's
It's
like 400 less employees is the
it
measure.
is. Yeah, there's a great saying that um, revenue is vanity. So how much you make, right? You're a company,
Mhm.
you do 10 million, but what if you're a $10 million company and you have no profit, right? So revenue is vanity. Like we're going
Yeah,
to compare ourselves, right? Oh, I don't do what they do and they don't do it. Now I got all kinds of doubt bouncing around in there, right? I don't
yeah,
do what you do. I don't make as much as you do. So revenue is vanity. Profit is sanity.
yeah, it's truth. It's like that to me, it's like I work with a lot of insurance companies, and insurance companies are kinda known to they have to have that reserve, right? They have to have the money to pay the claim, right? They have to have the money. They can't play around with not having the money. If they don't, then they go out of business, right? So they have to be very good at managing what their profit and loss is and what they actually have compared to some of these kind of these new world companies that will talk about their revenue, but when you look on with like their books, it's like, but they're not making any money. They got a lot of debt load. And some of these
Yes.
guys have like $1 trillion debt load. It's like, what kind of debt load? Like you've never made a profit. You've got like $1 trillion debt load.
Oh my God. There was a company I know that was doing 105 million a year. And at the end of the day, they had 5 million on the bottom line, right? I know another person that had a $7.5 million company with a $2 million bottom line. That's like 32% compared to
Mhm.
5 or 4.5%. I will take the profit over the revenue any day, right?
Yeah, because like,
And because we're
what are your obligations versus that revenue? Like, what do you actually owe?
right. It was very
How much
interesting
debt
because
do you have?
Inc. 5000, when I won that was like, and by the way, many people have won it. It's the top 5,000 companies in any given year. The idea was that it was based on that vanity number, the revenue number. How much did you grow on the top line? But how many of those companies, what if we added the bottom line? How many of those companies would still be in there? So it's interesting how we compare ourselves, not oranges to oranges or apples to apples.
Yeah, it's all skewed. It's all
And
kind
then
of
we let it bake in there, right? And we let it dictate how we act and how we feel, or hey, I'm not worthy, I can't do these things. I mean, if you doubt that you can play the piano, my friend, you will never play the piano to your full capability.
that's the big trap that a lot of people find themselves in. Um, I know a lot of guitar players in my, when I was in my 20s that like they just gave up because it didn't, they couldn't be Jimmy Page. It's like, well, you're never gonna be
Mm.
Jimmy Page. You're John Joe, right?
Right.
So like, there are other guys that figured out like I can't be Jimmy Page, but I can be me.
Yes.
And they actually love playing. So I always looked at those guys like, you guys haven't picked up your guitar. It's sitting in a garage. So you really aren't a musician because if you were a musician, you would just play it no matter what. Like
Mm.
if you're a musician, you play no matter what. You just do it because you love it. You go somewhere, you don't even know if you're gonna get paid, right? You'll go to a gig just to play with somebody just because it's an opportunity. Like
Right.
that's kind of what we do. But like we do it because we love it, not because we're trying to get the money. The money comes like after. But
Right.
that's the way it usually works. I mean, we need to be more business sense, but we're artists, so artists tend to not have that much business.
So I think a lot of people never achieve really the greatness they are because they've compared themselves and fell into that doubt trap of like not being able to compare equally to someone, but it's not equal.
Yeah,
Jimmy
never
Page,
equal.
by the way, trying to beat Jimmy Page is not a fair fight, man. It's
Yeah,
you know,
you're never gonna
if
get
you're a
there.
bassist,
Art
you want to
first,
be
steps
Chris
to do
Squire,
nothing.
man. That's not a fair fight, right? Be the
Yeah.
best you can. The best you can be. Hey, I would say I was an average engineer if you put me against engineers, but I was a badass innovator. I was a creative. I may not be able to put all the X's and O's together, but I could say I could see the vision of it.
Well, you came up
And
with a patent. I mean, the fact that just because you're not, like, at some level, like, some guy building stuff for NASA, right?
right,
You got that level of precision that you're gonna get that rocket's not gonna blow up. Right? That it's actually gonna that component's not gonna fail, right? Even though that was a lot of work to make it not fail, right? So it doesn't just do that out of the blue. But regardless, there's certain levels of engineering, but just like you can't compare yourself, to an astrophysicist if you're not an astrophysicist. I mean, you're not. That's not what you're supposed to do. I mean, you have to look at what you're doing. Did you do something innovative in your space? And there's multiple spaces. So you shouldn't compare one space to the other because it's probably not a fair fight.
some people design because they want the glory of it, right? There are some people that do it because they want to help somebody. These have different values. There is no shame in any of that. Because I've never designed a rocket that can come back and land back on the pad. Doesn't mean that I couldn't solve hot water hand washing at Costco for their food vendors.
There's
And
different
all of
engineering problems. I mean, you have different problems that you're solving if you came up with an innovation in your niche.
yes,
Because I think there's these niches, right? And everybody always wants somebody to be like, in music is like this pop. Pop is like, oh, everybody wants to be the pop.
yep,
But there's all these other niches. Like maybe I'm indie, maybe I'm shoegaze, and in shoegaze, that's only got a certain audience. But in shoegaze, you might be like the best shoegaze guy ever, right? But you're not gonna hit the pop chart. Right? You're
right.
never gonna get past like 20, 30, 40. You're never gonna get through. Maybe, but hardly ever. So, like, are you happy being where you are? Well, if you're happy being where you are, that's all you need.
It really is. I know we're coming close on time, but there's a friend of mine he's a public speaker, and I remember he he speaks in some of these business groups, and these people are always like, "Well, you could never scale up your public speaking. It's only you. You'll never be able to scale it up." And and this guy
What's the point?
he looks at the people that says it. That said it, and he says, "Geez, I just bought my father and my mother a brand new house. I don't know."
Yeah, you're doing okay for like, what scale are you talking about? Like,
What
if I'm
scale
doing
are you talking about?
yeah,
Do you have to be over the million mark to be successful? The answer is no. You can have a $300,000 business that pays the bills at your house, and you go on vacations, you live a happy life.
Mhm.
This comparison doubt is, it's, what do they say? The status quo has to go, right?
Yeah.
The status quo right now is that we're comparing ourselves to everybody who's popular, right? It used to be in
Yeah.
movies. Now it's everywhere. It's on your phone. It's on your watch. It's on
Yeah,
the
it's like high
TV
school.
now.
It's like the
It's
high
ev-
school popularity contest on steroids, and everybody's like, "Didn't you not like that in high school? So why do you like it now?"
right. I think that's a great analogy. Isn't that the truth though?
Yeah,
Because I,
'cause
I
it does.
remember the first reunion I went to out of high school. The football star now was bald, right? And not that was a bit, but he was the guy that had a beard in eighth grade and everybody envied him,
Yeah,
right?
he's the guy.
And the ugly girl now is the pretty girl.
Yeah,
Like
that's what happens. That's what
it,
happens. It switches
it's
up. Like, the
to,
guy that nobody was talking to, he's the CEO, right? He's got the yacht. Everybody thought the guy that was popular, he's, like, living, like, in the other side of town, on the other side of the track.
I tell you what, I didn't I graduated from high school, but that was the last bit of any kind of education I did. But I got to tell you, up here, I didn't stay in high school, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to stay in high school. I hung out with more better people. I realized that I am the average of the five people I hang out with, and I don't want to be the king all the time. You know,
Mhm.
I want to
Yeah,
be
you have
here
to be
so
number
I
1
can
all the time,
learn,
yeah.
right? I want to grow and learn as
You
a
push
to be a
yourself.
to be a
Yeah,
better
if you
person.
put yourself around people that have capabilities that you don't have and you don't let your ego be,
Yeah.
like, resentful of that, you can learn a lot. But if you're gonna sit there and be in the resentment trap because this person that can do this better than you, so you can't even be in the room because you get so upset, well, that's not a good place to be.
No, it's not. And you can't perform your best doing that either.
Yeah,
There's no doubt.
but I wanna let
But
people
when
know
I
we
say
hit the hour.
there's no doubt that you
There's no
can't.
doubt that's your book. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
don't don't doubt the doubt, right? Don't doubt the doubt.
yeah, we wanna make sure, like, remember when doubt becomes design, we've
Yeah.
got the QR code up there, for your website, so if you scan that with your phone, that's the title of the book. Here's the links that you can actually click on, your main link for martinjwatts.com and then your Instagram, and again, we got the QR code, so people scan that and click there, that's how they can get to your book, right?
Yes. Yeah, you get the book and drop me a line. Tell me something I can do. I always want to help somebody, and,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I want to be helped. I love it when people just drop a line and say hi. This is what I'm doing. This is who I am, and I'm happy to meet anybody who drops. And I will always reply. Okay.
That's awesome. Well, I wanna thank you for taking the time to talk to us on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. We've been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. Again, you can click on the links that you see here, on the different platforms we're on. We're gonna be on multiple platforms, so whatever platform you like to listen to or watch a podcast. Again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me today, Phantom.
Thank you.